All right, the time is 7 o'clock. We appear to have a quorum of the committee present, so I will call the meeting to order. I will note that a few of our members have let me know that they will not be in attendance tonight. Specifically Nate Bodwin, Mike Bruni, Skip Courier, and Greg Marr. So, with that said, let me proceed to call the roll. Dawn Anderson,
Anderson here.
Angelina Correa. Mark has his hand up. Did you have Mark, did you have a question before we complete our roll call?
You might unmute Dave. Their picture is at least. I don't know if you can.
Well, the room should be
Okay.
inputting into it.
Right.
Can't hear you.
Okay.
We just muted over. Yeah, we're muted in the audio, bottom left corner.
Yes, the room is muted.
Oh, there it is. Now I can hear you.
Now we're good.
Okay.
Start over.
Sorry about that. I can't read lips, David, and you looked really good with all the talking you were doing. I just couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm not going to demand that everybody be able to read lips for this. Okay, where was I? Angelina.
Present.
And Skip, I know he's going to be absent. Bob DeToma.
Here.
Dan Fitzgerald.
Here.
Mark Haddad.
Here.
Jeff Hess.
Here.
Andy Jefferson.
Here.
John Kelly.
Here.
Jim Malloy.
Here.
Greg Marr is absent. Angela Rahman.
Here.
And I think David Robbins is here. I'm not sure about that, but we'll count him as being present. So we have 11 out of 15 of our members present tonight. That's significantly better than a minimal quorum, which would be 8. So let me see, where is my agenda? All right, my first agenda item is public comment. If we have anybody in attendance who wishes to make a public comment to the committee, now would be the time to raise your hand, either in the room or on Zoom. Don't see any hands raised, so we will proceed. The next item is to consider whether the committee wants to set a policy for communication with a request to town council. I'm not quite sure where to start that off. Mark, did you want to?
Yeah,
start that off?
I understand that some members are contacting the town administrator and going directly to town council. I don't think that's a good idea. I think we need to have some coordination. So I'd like to have this committee pass a policy that any request to town council goes through the chair or is discussed here at a meeting before it goes to town council. If we're all haphazardly reaching out to town council, we don't know what people are asking. We don't know what the issues are. And I just think it just dissolves into chaos. So I'd like to have us consider a policy that any request or information from town council has to go through at least the chair at a minimum before it goes to the town administrator or to town council. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, and I would assume that the idea is that these would be requests related to committee business. You may have a personal matter, something that's just speaking for yourself and not directly related to committee business. I mean, you're free to contact whoever you want with something like that. But I think, Mark, your idea, your suggested policy would be any communication with council regarding the committee, any business before the committee would go through the chair or some other designated contact.
I agree. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, if you have a conflict of interest issue or something like that, absolutely, you have the absolute right to go right to town council. But if it has something to do with a matter before this committee or something to do with the charter review committee, you need to know what's going on, David, and the rest of the committee should be able to weigh in and at least discuss it at the next meeting so we know what the issues are.
Yeah, for the most part, I would suggest that, that the committee sort of be aware of, and ideally we discuss it. For example, at the last meeting, we agreed to request town council to provide us with some information about majority, the questions about majority voting that have come up relative to what we might want to do in the charter. So that was, the committee agreed to communicate with council. Council has just responded to that. And so that's the sort of thing. And generally speaking, it's good for the committee to be speaking with one voice, I think. But any other comments on that or questions?
No, I would just say if Mark is making that as a motion, I would be happy to second that.
Yes. Yes. Mark?
That's my motion.
Okay.
The only thing I would ask is, as we go through that process, once you, assuming this gets approved, once you forward a comment or a question to town council, if we could get the response before the next meeting, so that, and distribute it among the members so that we've all had a chance to read whatever the response is before getting it just sitting here in the room, I think that would be very helpful.
I agree
Yes.
with that.
Yes, absolutely. That is the type of thing that can be shared with all committee members outside of the meeting, because that's not the response from town council would not be considered a deliberation, because it's not a member of the committee speaking. In fact, the response we got from town council regarding the quorum and voting, that just came in yesterday, I think it was. So that got out to the committee almost as soon as it got in. I was a little bit late yesterday getting the meeting packet put together, and I apologize. I sent it out just after midnight, which doesn't give you a whole lot of time to look at it before the meeting. My intention is to try to make sure that a meeting material packet should be available for the committee members at least 24 hours before the meeting, whenever possible. Sometimes something comes in real late, but yeah, I had other stuff going on this week, and so that ended up being a little later than I wanted it to be. But yes, in general, I absolutely agree that really any information from outside that comes into this committee, should be shared with the committee members far enough advance of the meeting so that we all have time to digest it. Any other discussion of Mark's motion?
Good. Just so I'm clear, so let's say, and I have a question, I have an issue that I feel could be taken up by the chair. I send it to you first, Dave, and then you make the decision as to whether it needs to go to council. You know what I mean? Like, it's arguably, like, so obviously I'm understanding if it's a personal matter with me and some type of conflict, that's, probably not. But
Right,
if it was in general, hey, are we doing this correctly? It would go to you, and then you would make a determination as to whether it's going to go through the chain to town council?
Possibly. I think assuming that it's a question that would most appropriately be answered by town council, I would, and I would tend to lean in favor of, if I think town council might be able to help, then probably so. But Mark, you might have a thought on that.
Yeah, if there's something that the chair feels can go to council and request an opinion to bring back to the committee, that's great. And if the chair is concerned and isn't sure 100%, you can put it on the next agenda for the committee to debate and discuss, and then decide to send in a request to town council. I think the chair is the gatekeeper of what goes to town council. We elected you chair. We have trust in your ability to manage this stuff, and we expect you to act accordingly. That would be my piece on this.
There's never going to be something that goes and then is just like, no. I think that the two options would be either sent directly to town council or put on the next agenda.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Jack,
Right.
You said that much more eloquently than I did.
Yes, if there's, I think if there would be a question in my mind whether the committee wants town council to weigh in this, if I'm uncertain about that, then I think you're, that idea to have the committee discuss whether we want to reach out to council on that particular matter. And did you have something, Andy?
Yeah, just, I think for reference, the select board is not allowed to reach out to town council directly. We have to go through the town administrator for those requests. Part of that is cost management, so we're not eating up retainer and, shocked by some fee at the end of the month, but yeah, I think
Yep.
it definitely makes sense.
Yep, and I spoke to Evan about this briefly the other day, kind of, asking him how he wanted to handle it, because I'm remembering back to when we were doing the bylaw study committee, that, Evan basically wanted to be kept in the loop, but Evan, basically, the process there was the chair would send an email to council and copy Evan on it. So Evan is aware, everything. And there have been previous times when I felt, and I think it was, I don't remember specifically what the occasion was, but I thought I needed to send my request to Evan, and Evan would forward it to council. I have on occasion on matters related to something the planning department is doing. I've sent my request to Fiona, who then forwarded it to council. But it's for that exact reason that at the very least they need to be aware of all communication with council, and if Evan sees something he thinks is consuming too much of council's time for us, I think he would want to step in and say, slow down, guys, or something.
Agreed, yeah.
But yeah, I did check with Evan specifically that he said, yeah, that he's okay with me communicating directly with town council, provided he gets a copy of all the correspondence. But yeah,
It wasn't even so much directed as you. I am sure
Fine.
you have earned that right as chair and as David Robbins. But,
Yes. but I'm well aware of the fact that town council doesn't work for us for free, and that it's really Evan's job overall to manage the communications with town council the way he sees fit. And so you've got a rule for select board. Our situation is similar but not identical. As I said, Evan is okay with me communicating directly with council, provided Evan sees what's going on. No. Any other discussion of Mark's motion? Okay, hearing none. Let me see. Roll call. Dawn,
Aye.
Angelina,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Andy,
aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Angela.
Aye.
I'll vote aye on that. Carried unanimously. All right, what's next on the agenda? My screen isn't big enough. I should bring another screen with me so I can have it all there at once. Okay, the next thing on the agenda was continuation of our discussion of outreach. At the last meeting, we talked about outreach to the general public, and the committee said they would like to see a proposed message for us to send to the public. And so here's what I've come up with as a proposal. Some of it is written about the same as the request we sent out to the town departments, boards, and committees, which some of you may have seen via your membership on other boards and committees. Let me see if I can't enlarge that a little bit. Can you read that?
Yeah.
Yep.
I can make it bigger on the screen if it would help.
I think for me, you're gonna have to make it way bigger.
I think I get
Do you want to switch seats?
I think I get the gist
Uh-oh.
of it.
All right.
Oh, much better.
So I'll give you a moment to read it. You probably want to highlight the second paragraph. For those new to the process, the town charter sets up our town's government structure and main procedures. This includes a legislative branch, town meeting, elected positions, administrative structure, especially town administrator, and financial procedures. Think of the charter as the town's constitution. It lays the foundation, just as the state and federal constitutions do for their governments. In contrast, town bylaws act like laws passed by the state or federal government. This was, we discussed this a little bit last time, as to, to give a sense of, for people who aren't familiar with all the intricacies of town government, charter. What are we talking about?
I think that sentence alone is the most important of that second paragraph. Just to, because people will quickly be able to identify a comparison for the
Yeah,
body of the paper,
yeah,
so
yeah.
they know what their suggestions should be rooted in.
Yeah, I kind of got that from our discussion at the last meeting. I wanted to make sure I captured that in some way here. And going on, with including pointing people to our webpage if they want to read the charter or read the history or anything else. But I didn't want to go into great detail here. There's this. If you make something too long, people don't read it. TLDR.
You won't get any feedback at
So
all.
I try to keep this short.
I think the link is smart too, because from what I've seen working with the charter on the website, it's pretty easy to understand how to navigate it. And if you can't find exactly what you're looking for, you can just kind of Control F the idea you're looking at. I want to see how the budget process is laid out. There it is.
Yep. And seemed to be helpful just to emphasize that how important we think if anybody wants to comment on it, we'd love it. We think it's very helpful. And the usual enumeration of, how do you send your comments into us?
David, this is really well done. Do you want a motion to adopt it as our public outreach?
So moved.
Second.
Moving and seconded. I was kind of hoping I'd have some, you did this wrong, you got to do the different, or maybe someone else would see
David,
something
take
helpful
the
here.
win. Take the win,
It's
David.
good enough.
I mean, as much as I like to think I do a pretty good job of writing things, I never assume that what I do can't be improved. I'll do it.
Can I ask
Full-
one question?
Yes.
To steal your thunder, because I think it's written really well. My only question is on the piece at the bottom about carefully considering all comments and suggestions. And again, this is my first time, so keep me honest, but is it worth putting something about how or where we will, I'm thinking of like Nicole's email that came in. Is it worth saying that like these will be included to review at the next meeting, or I guess just letting people know like what happens to their comments?
That doesn't go into a vacuum.
Yeah, like are they going to see them, like if you put something in, come to the next meeting, you'll hear us discuss it, or I don't know, just something about where all of them live, or
Yeah, I think, we haven't yet fully worked out how we're going to do this exactly, but I know I think we pretty much agreed that we want to make available on the website everything that we've been looking at and where we're at.
okay.
So a sentence, I'm not quite sure off the top of my head how best to word it,
Yeah, me too.
but
David, if I may, I think she raises a very good point. I'd say the committee will carefully consider all comments and suggestions we receive at duly posted meetings. All proposed suggestions will be added to an agenda for future consideration. I think that addresses what she's asking.
I would just change, like, instead of to agenda, to say packet, because we're
Sure.
not going to be posting all
Yep.
the comments on there.
Good point. But I think that meets what Angela's saying, right?
And I think that goes well hand in hand there's something at the top that is really good to put in there, but might turn some people away from putting in comments right when they think of them, because it does give us a timeline that is realistic of October of next year being when a lot of these go forward. And I think some people may look at that and think, wow, this doesn't even say what they're going to do with my comment. So I'm not. So I think including that as well will make people know. As soon as I think of something, I'll send it in. Here are my options.
Remind me, I think when you went over how things were done for the bylaw review, was that you had different categories that the feedback fell into, like different buckets? Like, I know we're going to send it out to specific boards and committees in town, feedback, but just the general public, we may not consider it. Is that going to be part of the process, like the charter? Like, we include all the feedback, but then also address it specifically at the meeting when we're covering that specific section?
Yeah,
To review, to make sure there's, like, when I gather feedback on different projects, I kind of cross-reference it to make sure that, okay, this is about this specific section, and these were the changes, and 90% of them were suggesting the same thing. But 10% were scattershot in a lot of different directions. And how will we be reviewing the feedback? Like, would it be as it comes in, or will we compile it and then when we get to, and this doesn't have to be in the outreach statement, I'm just
Right.
kind of thinking it through to the
Yeah, I
next
think
step.
until we see more clearly based on what suggestions we're getting, what matters we're considering, I'm not sure that we know how we're going to organize that. I mean, this is one of the differences between the charter and the bylaw committee, is that the bylaw committee, we had 41 distinctly separate bylaws, and so each of them sort of stood on its own. And so it made a lot of sense to partition the work according to the bylaw section article. Here we have 7 articles of the charter, and in some cases, one article pretty clearly covers one topic. In other cases, it's maybe a little bit less clear. So I think, in my mind at least, how we partition the work out and how we present, how we group things together for presentation purposes, it may become clearer once we get more, once our list of suggestions gets fleshed out more, it may become clearer how we want to do that.
So I want to make sure I'm hearing everybody the right way. We want to be sure that the person who sends their suggestions in understands that it might not be reviewed at the very next meeting. It might be months down the road when we get to that particular portion of the review process.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe,
Preventing them from saying, well, you didn't review my topic.
yeah,
And then
so,
lose interest in following our exciting meetings after they,
Stay tuned.
like,
So-
well, they didn't cover it.
Say it isn't so.
as a suggestion for a fairly simple way to incorporate that in this particular thing is, the committee will carefully consider at its regular meetings all comments and suggestions that we receive. So that makes a little bit of a stronger statement about when and how we will look at these without committing to a specific schedule. So we don't really, basically, when a suggestion comes in, we will at least look at it and we will spend at least a little bit of time talking about it at the next meeting after it comes in.
And
Go ahead, Jack.
to Dawn's point about the different buckets of areas we're looking at, my biggest thought was, issues we have received comment on, whether from board or from a citizen, issues we are discussing and issues we've come to a conclusion on or come to a decision on. And so if people are going through this to our page on the website, you know, once we get down the road, once we start actively discussing a lot of these articles, I think if they go to make a suggestion, they'll be able to see in the same place what we've talked about. So if they have a suggestion that they can see, oh, they've already, you know, talked about this, let me see what they said, or, you know, something along those lines.
Jeff, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. So I think if we're potentially going to be holding on to topics for months at a time, we might want to think about some sort of at least tracking mechanism that folks can see so that we've received and maybe when we're planning to talk about these topics so that they can re-engage at the appropriate time. So, I mean, if we're able to somewhat forecast that we're not going to be talking about, you know, topic B for 3 months, the folks that submitted it, you know, can kind of rest easy and check back in at that point in time as long as they know.
Yep. I think we had talked at one of our, maybe both of our previous meetings that conceptually, at least similar to what we did on the bylaw committee, we had a page on the bylaw committee's website where we tracked, you know, the status of all the proposals, you know. And that one we had a list of, you know, for this bylaw article, you know, we have a proposed revision and it was last updated. So, because sometimes they went through several revisions, but we'd have a link to the text of the proposed revisions. The bylaw committee also, and I don't remember that we put this on the website, but we had an internal action item tracking that we used, which tracked, you know, which items we needed to work on, which we've completed, and that was a slightly different method of tracking. And when we haven't yet really nailed down how we want to track our work, and there may be there may be something that's more internal to the committee for the committee members to keep track of, and then there's some way of informing the public of what we are working on and what the status of each of the suggestions is. So we still have to work out some of those details. But as far as this, you know, outreach message, I just added the phrase, the committee will consider at its regular meetings everything we receive. And if that's, you know, are there any other,
I think I was just thinking as you were saying that as it pertains to this message, do we feel like we need to put a deadline to anything, or do we want to keep like comments coming in, even if we've already passed budget and someone put something in for it? Does it matter? Or?
Yeah, no, I think, I don't see a need for a deadline.
Okay.
I had mentioned the want for doing a 2-phase public outreach of the first phase is, you know, whatever ideas you have, send them our way. And then the second phase being, this is what we've discussed, this is what we're thinking, what do you think? And that can either be opinions on what we're putting forward or anything we missed. But I think if you have an idea, send it, no matter when, no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. 2-phase.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor to approve this outreach message as amended, and with any, I'll assume the motion includes any further amendments that anybody wants to suggest before we vote on it. Is there any other discussion? Okay, so ship it, as we used to say. I should call for a vote since there is a motion on the floor. Dawn?
Dawn, aye.
Angelina?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Or I could be ornery and vote no, even though I wrote the thing with everybody's help here. Okay,
Bless you.
I can take that off the screen.
Should we plan on our next meeting being a public hearing? I know we talked about that previously. Do we want to make that decision?
There was a suggestion made, I think, at the last meeting that the April meeting be a public hearing. So now that we have a public outreach message, our next agenda item is, okay, how do we make this outreach message visible to the public? Where do we send it? And then sort of the obvious catch-all answer is everywhere we can think of.
Is this something where we're able to put the, for lack of a better term, put the ball in the town's court and say, disseminate this on your platform, social medias, lists, as well as us doing, our own outreach?
I don't know, what do you think? I think just off the top of my head, I'm thinking we've got some, the town social media, which we can put that in the hands of whoever is responsible for the town social media. But aside from that, do we want to see if we can get this published in the Grafton News, the Community Advocate? Do we want to have an announcement of any kind put on the cable? And I don't know if this whole thing is suitable for, we might have to have a much shorter version of it to fit on the cable announcements. I don't know enough about the mechanics of that. I have no idea what kind of an audience the cable announcements get.
That could, anything, if we recorded a short bite that mostly drove people to the website, we could use that for social media as well.
Exactly. That's good.
So,
So there's social media going through the town, social media that we pick up on and share, as I've learned, goes further. Because the more times we share it, the further it goes, the more people see it. I just finished 2 videos for the town clerk. How do I vote? How do I mail in a vote? When do I vote? Those videos are coming out Tuesday, I think. So they last less than a minute and a half. Just bing, 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 and the info's out. The videos can go to YouTube. The videos can go on the local channels. YouTube's the best option. The town website, some people might argue the town website's the first option and YouTube is second. Vice versa, it doesn't matter. But I imagine that William or Amber can help us with that process. The video creation is not rocket science. It's where do you put it and get the most eyeballs on it is the...
Do you think we could do a pitch to get an episode of the Municipals to cover the Charter Review
I've
Committee?
heard they're really hard to work with. I don't think we need to. I think
Then we'd be out in the podcast sphere as well.
I think the best way to do it social media wise is to have one post from the town with essentially what we just had and the relevant links. And then if you'd like, you can individually share it. So, the most prevalent social media that most people in the town use would be Facebook, and you can share a post and you can write your own little blurb on top, but it'll still send you to the main post. I think that would be the best way, just so we don't have 15 different versions of the message out there, and we can all just say, it can be as simple as, like you're saying, because the more people share it, the more people see it, and just be, hey, this is a great opportunity to have a say in how we continue to push our town forward, and then they can still just click and see that message we just voted on.
And you could do a 30-second blast telling people, where does my suggestion go and what will the committee do with it, to circle back to that topic.
For residents who are not on social media, and believe it or not, there are some, other than the 2 sort of local newspapers that some people get.
Oh, the Blackstone Valley Express? That's another
Blackstone
one.
Valley Express.
We read it every time it comes to our house.
Grafton News
We
just
follow
got
Luke,
a new
like,
writer. I don't know
quite
who it is.
faithfully.
for town meeting, we usually put warrants at the library and the post offices. We can consider those locations.
Yes, we could print out flyers with this.
Yep, print flyers.
And leave them at various locations for folks to pick up. That's a good idea.
Does the town have some sort of like email list? Because I know we have the alert thing, but that's
I don't
not-
believe we have anything outside of the Code Red system.
That's why I was interested in doing the public hearing, because I know that there's, while I'm not completely educated on it, I know that there's a somewhat formal process about, for a public hearing, the town sending out information
Yes.
to interested people and them taking the onus to do so. That's why I think it would be a good idea for us to do.
So isn't on the website, isn't there a notifications link where you can sign up to get notifications from the town? Pretty sure there
Yeah,
is.
and there's different categories of what you can sign up for.
And so charter covers just about all the categories in the town government. Maybe we could just flood it through that too and get as many of those automatically just sent out to people's email boxes that we're looking for comments from them.
And then right on the front page of the town website,
Yeah.
there's like a news
News and
banner.
events.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
there-
should go in
'cause
there.
there's no, for a suggestion thing like this, there's no too much like publicity or information. Just blast it, because if, you know, the average resident isn't going to say, well, I have 20 suggestions. It's going to be, oh, well, here's my idea, and it's that one time. So you just got to catch them once, they'll think of it, send it in, so.
Plus, it also benefits us at some point in time when we get to town meeting to have all of these, whatever changes we're considering, recommending. It's my experience that there will be people who come out of the woodwork and said, I didn't even know you guys were working on this. How was I supposed to know? And so when you can state where you've posted it and that you've made the best effort that you possibly could to get the information out to everybody, it really does help a lot at that one point.
Yeah, there's always somebody at town meeting that, I didn't know anything about this.
Well,
Where-
then I
how
think
come nobody
perhaps
told
you
me
should
about
ask the
this?
moderator to make an announcement at town meeting,
That's
ask them for feedback.
Yes, we can make announcements at, well, we have 3 town meetings between now and the time we're going to vote on these changes, so absolutely, an announcement and that flyer we talked about.
The flyer, if you could ask the moderator if they would allow you to put a flyer in the Welcome Center.
If we only knew a moderator. Mr. Chair, do you know if the surrounding towns are doing the same process that we are at the same time?
Not that I'm aware of.
So do you think it would be worthwhile to reach out to Spectrum One to see if that might be something they'd be interested in covering, promoting? I mean, a third of the town subscribes to Charter, and the other 2/3 subscribe to Verizon, and it's worth a shot. I mean, they send somebody out to cover the parade every year, so,
Worst they say is no.
yeah, right.
He was trying to get on TV.
You tell them you know Jack, you're all set.
Any other ideas? Yeah. Got a pretty good list of ideas here. Social media in various ways, local newspapers, of which we have 3 that would be worth considering. Flyers sent around, flyers available at the libraries, maybe at the town clerk, the desk in the town clerk's office, maybe the senior center. The thought crossed my mind to see if we couldn't get this sent out in like this, there's a senior newsletter. The schools send out information to the parents. As I recall, we had, not on this committee, but, and I mean, I'm not even sure that I remember where specifically this was mentioned, but you know, getting word out through the schools, my recollection is when that idea was proposed somewhere along the line, the school said, yeah, we kind of try to keep this limited to information relevant to the schools and the students. So yeah, you reach all the parents that way, but I don't think I would propose that based on my somewhat dim recollection of that idea being discussed in the past. But through the senior center, it might be a possibility.
So with that, only because I would happen to be down there today and asking about the the Gazette that goes out. They're getting ready to publish the April issue tomorrow. I think they're doing some of their final proofing. So we obviously wouldn't make that one, but just to give a time frame, it'd be something we need to work on earlier the month before in order to get it out in advance.
Yes, I think I remember encountering that with, again, somewhere along the line with proposals to send something out through the senior center.
Yep.
Mark?
Are we going to vote on the motion? Or, because it seems like we veered off that discussion, and I don't recall voting on the motion.
The motion to approve the message?
Yeah, did we do that?
We did vote on that.
See, I'm falling asleep. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Pay attention, Mark. That's
Yes, I will.
demerits. All righty.
When do we, I don't know if this was in here, but when do we picture this going out at large? Because I'm just thinking also timelines is this March, and then we have our town meeting too this May with some things that will probably want to be communicated. So I'm just curious in terms of when we think we'll send this out.
Yeah, I was thinking we'd try to start pushing this out at least almost as soon as possible.
Okay.
Some of these things may take a while, but I can hand this to Amber tomorrow, and she can take care of getting it out to the places she can get it out to, either herself or delegating that. Some of the others will take a little bit more work, contacting the Grafton News and the Community Advocate and the Blackstone Valley Express. I don't know if any of us have contacts there or in a good position to reach out that way.
Yeah, I think just throughout the rest of April. And then once we have everything out, it'll be open from that point forward.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about holding a public hearing in April, that would be the second Thursday of April, whatever that date is the 9th, I think.
Yep.
Then getting the word out on this prior to that would be helpful. And then there would be the question of publicizing that public hearing. And kind of the same considerations apply. How do you get the word out for that?
Should that be on the message maybe? So that we're not duplicating?
It could be part of the message for cases where the message is going to be out before that April date. So it would be like an addendum to that. But longer term, this message is
Ongoing.
it's going to be alive a lot longer than April. But accompanying this message, where it is going out before the April date, the message can be accompanied by an announcement of the public hearing. There's a lot of ideas here. I want to make sure that we have somebody committed to following up on the ideas. And like I say, I can get Amber. Maybe the best way to follow up on this for the immediate future is to I can touch base with Amber and find out which of these things she can do or arrange to have done, and where we haven't figured out how to do it, we'll probably have to discuss it more amongst the committee. If anyone wants to volunteer to do anything.
I could help out with the media outreach. I can contact Community Advocate, Grafton News,
Okay.
Blackstone Valley.
I'm happy to bring flyers to the various places if they can be printed or whatever. I'm happy to bring those to libraries and post offices and.
Yeah, so I might guess that Amber could help, could get flyers printed
Okay, I'll just Come here and grab them when you guys.
But yeah, I can, you know, after I touch base with Amber and find out when we can, I'm not sure I can guess how many flyers we might need, but I don't want to go overboard. With 1,000 flyers, maybe we print a couple of hundred or 100 or 200 and check where we put them out. And if people have been grabbing them, then we can always print more. That would make sense. Let me see. Make sure I make some notes here so I don't forget. I'm sure Greg will do his best to write up minutes of this after he watches the video, but you know, Greg did ask me to kind of take some notes, and whatever notes I take, I'll share with him. So between the two of us, we'll have, hopefully we'll figure out who did and said what.
Please leave out of the minutes that I fell asleep and didn't realize we voted, David. I'd appreciate that.
Do we have to ask town council if we need to collect that in the minutes if anyone slept during it?
Yes, the minutes will note when somebody confesses to have fallen asleep. Now, I'd be comfortable leaving that out of the minutes. All righty, so that's where we are so far. With any other ideas for how and where we publicize this?
I have a question. When people submit comments, how do we actually, as a committee member, how do we see those comments? Or where we will see them? Where
Okay.
will we see them?
Yeah, we all, assuming we're all getting emails from the committee mailing list, the one public comment we've received from Nicole Effier, that was sent to the entire email list. So
Okay, so I didn't get that. So who do I need to follow up with on that?
if you're not getting emails from the email list, follow up with Amber
Okay.
or Cindy. I don't remember now. I think Amber was setting up our email list, but yes, for everybody on the committee, if you haven't been getting the emails from the committee, and I definitely follow up. 'Cause not too many years ago, I was aware of a number of difficulties with the email lists. I think one of my other committees, the email list didn't seem to get out. I'd send a message to the email list and no one got it. And one time I tried to verify. I sent the message to the list. I sent the message to all the individuals saying, "Did you get this via the committee list?" And no one was getting it at the time. I think they fixed that one, but
So the reason why I asked is that I think that somebody said along one of the comments that how are we going to track these? And while I haven't volunteered to place an ad or take something to someplace, I would be willing, as a retired town manager who's busy but not really busy, I would be willing to volunteer to put together a database to track those comments and to put it in such a way that it reference which section of the charter it would actually be looking to comment on, so that as we receive, because my guess would be we'll receive some comments that are very similar and deal with the same section, so that at some point it can be organized and sorted very easily so that we can do it by section in the charter. And I would be happy to volunteer to do something like that.
I'm assuming that nobody in the committee is going to say, "Oh no, I wanted to do that."
Yeah.
Yes, but that kind of circles back to a topic we talked about earlier: is how are we tracking these? How are we publicizing that on the website? Once we have kind of figure out how to organize it, and we'll have to talk more about what do we want the website to show the public about the suggestions we've received and the action we have or have not taken on them. And so Yeah, if you can come up with propose a way to organize them and present them, I think the committee would be delighted to
Great.
take that. So I'll make sure we have that on their agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, happy to do it. And I'll reach out to Amber and make sure I'm getting those emails.
Yeah. Okay, so that's on how and where we publicize this outreach that we just agreed to. I had on the list also how to collect responses, and what we're sending out, or what I proposed to send out was simply that people could, of course, come to a meeting or send in by snail mail, but online, it's just sending an email to the entire committee. I think we touched on that, one of our previous discussions, we touched on the thought of setting up a separate email address to send the suggestions in. I thought about that for a while, and I kind of concluded that I didn't see any added value to that as opposed to just sending it. I mean, in principle, you could say, well, when people send suggestions in, it should just go to one person who will collect them, organize them, and then send it out to the rest of the committee. But nothing wrong in my mind with the entire committee seeing every suggestion that's mailed in as it's mailed in. I think any other way of doing it would just be an extra complication. I have a tendency to want to not make things more complicated than they have to be.
And if everybody gets a copy, it's more eyes, and it doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
It doesn't risk getting lost in the shuffle, I should say.
So we're all comfortable with with all our public comments just coming into every member of the committee. Or to be precise, every member of the committee that actually gets emails through that mailing list.
I think I might be. I think I misspoke. So I just, looking over his shoulder, I wrote down her name and I just searched it and I found it. So I am
Okay.
getting it.
Can I?
Yes,
No,
Don?
I'm going to forget my thought, but. Oh, one of the ways of responses was snail mail. That'll come through the town administrator's office. Will
Yes.
they scan it and then email the committee with what was submitted? If someone does write a letter, then otherwise, what are we going to pass it around at the meeting? Or like,
I'm trying to think what board would have.
like we wouldn't be able to review it beforehand if we didn't get it scanned and then distributed as a PDF. We'd have to wait until we were all together. So that.
Yes,
we could
that-
review. So I
do
think
that.
we could incorporate that into the protocol, is that if we do get any correspondence through the town
Yes.
administrator's mail,
Yes,
put in, that it be scanned and sent to the.
absolutely.
Could we, the other thing we could do is we could add an item on every agenda that just said correspondence, and then for any correspondence that was received, it could be attached to the agenda, and that way, it's not sending out the extra email, it's just sending out the agenda. And that way, it's part of the agenda, part of the public record.
That just reminded me of something that maybe should go on the message. Thank goodness we said that
They're all
we
public records.
accept it as amended. Should we make it clear on our message that suggestions are public record? So that if you write something in, that is subject to public record? Or I think that's might be redundant,
Assume.
but
It's possible that for some people who would send something in, they might not be aware that anything they send to the town is a public record, but that also applies to, anything. We've got, every board and committee and department has a contact us, place on the webpage. And I don't think we ever, and every one of those is going to be anything you send in by any means whatsoever is a public record. And I don't think in the other cases, I don't think anybody makes a point of saying that.
No.
it's probably just assumed that, like I said, I don't know if everybody who emails something into the town is aware that it's a public record. But, you can kind of go off the deep end worrying about some of this stuff. So, yeah, I would think it's a reasonable assumption that people should understand that their communications with the town are public records.
When select board receives snail mail, Amber scans it in and emails it to the entire group.
Yep. So I would expect Amber to do the same for us.
Yep.
It's good to make a note of that, though. All right.
Yeah, at least make Amber aware that we'd like her to do that.
Yes. Okie dokie. So that covers all, I think that covers all the agenda items I had under the topic of outreach. So if no one else has anything on that topic, we can move on to charter revisions. Basically, I listed two things on the agenda, new suggestions and discussion of any and all suggestions we've got. So off the top, does anybody on the committee have a new suggestion to offer us?
I have a new suggestion. Under section 3.7, part B, Grafton Housing Authority powers and duties. Upon checking the Mass General Law, it became clear that the parts listed in our home rule powers and duties are just a couple of the ones listed in general law. And while the second one, make available housing for families of low income and for elderly persons of low income, is exactly what we do, the first part shall make studies of the housing needs of the community and shall provide programs to make available housing. And then it kind of bleeds into the second one. It's not something that has ever been within our purview, we've been funded to do or been asked of. And considering that there are other parts under Mass General Law where we are giving the ability to conduct investigations, determine areas of substandard, decadent, or blighted open areas. There are a lot of things in here that it says we have the right to do that I frankly don't think we should have any ability to do. But at least for our Grafton home rule, I don't think it's appropriate that we have something in there that has never been asked of us and already falls under the second part of it that says the housing authority shall have such other powers and duties as are given to housing authorities by general law.
So the proposal would be that the powers and duties portion of the charter simply say housing authority shall have such powers and duties as are prescribed by general law. Or
I would like to keep the portion that says the housing authority shall make available housing for families of low income and for elderly persons of low income.
yeah, and just add the catch-all.
Yes,
reference in
after
state
that,
law.
because I think that we could easily, for each and every board, just have the, such powers and duties given to blank board by general law. But I do want people to be able to get some sort of an idea what powers and duties we have by reading our charter. And I think if someone were to ask me, what does the housing authority do? I would explain it exactly in those first two responsibilities of making available housing for families and elderly persons of low income.
Okay, so that is now on the table. Add that to our list of suggested changes. Any other new suggestions?
I wouldn't say it's a new suggestion after we got Nicole's email, but I similarly was thinking about something around, in the budget section around some sort of override timeline. So I think just to highlight what she said, I'd like to discuss that, please.
All righty, let me see.
I think after, what I would like is after we get with the public hearing, because we've already had that suggestion written in by Mr. Haddad, is ask some people to come in who have privy to that process so that we can get a good idea. I think we're all in agreement that we should have it much more outlined, but then figure out exactly how we should outline it. Because I certainly am not fully educated on how the budget timeline should look, so I wouldn't want to say, by this date, we should have this, and by this date, we should have this number, because that just might not be available. But I think that should be a whole meeting.
Yeah, okay, so if we want to move on to discussion of things that we have already been placed under consideration, maybe the first one, I don't know, excuse me, I was going to suggest that we talk about quorums and majority votes, although the memo on that from council came out just within the past day, so you guys have not had any time to read and digest it, really, so and if you wanted to talk about that at all tonight, I mean, the end result is we want to consider amending the charter provision that has to do with majority voting, but if it would be helpful for the committee members to have more time to read council's memo on that, then we can just note the council has given us a memo. Town council's memo ends up, suggesting several options that we could consider. But if you want to talk about that at all tonight,
I think a lot of
feel free.
his options kind of boil down to the idea of, without saying it, we would have to make some, I don't know if radical is the appropriate word, changes to some very plain definitions, such as the definition of like quorum and majority. I think he does a really good job at the top of outlining how it works as of right now and stipulating that majority vote is defined multiple times, and that in the absence of a rule for this specific case, there is a Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court ruling that has stipulated essentially that abstentions are no's in the case that a majority vote is needing to be decided. So I think just based on how the precedent is now, it would be very difficult for us to make a change for just here in Grafton, based on my interpretation.
Okay. On the assumption that we would like more time to review and digest this, and your comment is well taken, Jack. We will, obviously, we'll keep this on the table for consideration, but I guess just generally speaking, we're still kind of early in the game. We don't have to make any actual decisions. But for this, if we do want to propose a change to the charter at some point, we will have to write up the proposed change. But yeah, I don't want to rush things right now. I think it's better for us to take time to think things through. So that's probably sufficient for that.
This might fall under our next item, but I could nominate myself as being in charge of, as we go on through these early days, keeping track of what has been proposed so far, even in just draft form. Like we had some proposed earlier by Mark. And so as we continue, I foresee after a public hearing and then reaching out to our boards and committees, just keeping track of everything as we go.
Is that kind of what you had in mind of doing, Jim?
I think he's doing something slightly different. You're looking at doing
Our internal proposals.
the internal proposals that are being, like what he just suggested, keeping track of that.
So
I
that
think
as,
that's different.
we had board members or, chairs or department heads or so ever that have to do with this charter coming forward to give us information, we could say, well, so-and-so had proposed this. What do you think of that? And they could either say that looks great or that sounds terrible.
Okay. So that doesn't particularly overlap with what you offer. Okay. So Jack will take care of tracking that. And we'll remain flexible yeah, as we get further into the work, we may find that, things do overlap or that there's a better way to track things, but, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I think it actually would be complementary because if we get like Nicole Ethier's comments, and then we get to a point where we discuss them, if we decide to take some action on that, then he'll be keeping track of what that action is that we're recommending.
Okay,
And
good.
so I think it'd be complementary.
All right, so continuing discussion of proposed charter revisions. Mark, one of the changes Mark had proposed was to have the town administrator appoint to the fire chief. And I looked into that a little bit, thought about it, and aside from the fact that I'm not sure which charter text Mark was proposing to amend because it didn't match up with ours, the issue that we may have with an appointed fire chief, and again, this is probably something that we'll want to look further into, but I wanted to bring it up, is that we had adopted the strong chief model. And the general law for the strong chief model specifically has the select board appointing the chief. It also has the select board involved in various other elements of the chief's job. And the select board sets the salary. The select board can remove the chief for cause. The select board approves purchases made by the chief, and the select board approves compensation of deputy forest wardens. Don't know if we have deputy forest wardens, but that's neither here. The point is that the general law is quite specific about the select board having the responsibility for appointing and basically managing the fire chief's responsibility of his job. So it's probably considering whether to make the chief, have the chief appointed by the town administrator might not be as simple as I would have thought it would be. And this is probably a question that would have to be posed to town council if we wanted to follow up on the idea. Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, if I used the wrong section, I apologize. When I put that together, I was doing 1,000 things that day when I sent in my proposals. But I think if we just put it in the charter in one particular section and leave him as a strong chief, the charter, according to what town council said to us last meeting, is a state law, right? And as long as it doesn't conflict with other state laws, it allows us to do what we want to do within the town of Grafton. So I think if we find a section of the charter where with the town administrator, town manager's appointing authority, says he appoints the fire chief and the fire chief is a strong chief under whatever that section is of the law, I think that does it, David. And maybe you just need town council to clarify, but I don't think it's overly complicated because we did that in Groton and we just put a simple section, the town manager shall appoint the fire chief, subject to ratification by the select board, and that was it. Wasn't overly complicated.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that when I worked for the town of Sturbridge that I appointed the fire chief subject to the select board's confirmation. It was one of the rare positions that required a select board confirmation, and that he was a strong chief in that particular community. The biggest issue that I see, because I agree with Mark on this, that it's hard to, when, especially during emergencies, probably more than any other time, you basically, as a town manager, you have a team of people that you're working with. And it's difficult if you have one person who doesn't really, he's part of the team, but not really part of the team. And it makes it really difficult to have a good coordinated response. It can, doesn't mean that it will, but it can create complications. And the other issue that a lot of people don't really think about is that town managers and school superintendents are put in a different bucket because they're appointed by a multiple member body. And so their performance evaluations, any disciplinary issues or any type of corrective action that wants to be taken has to be discussed in a public meeting by the board. And it makes it really tough. I'm sure Andy can agree to this. It makes it really tough to do performance evaluations when you have to do it publicly. It's hard for the board, it's hard for the manager. And when you put the fire chief in that same category, it means that the fire chief, he has to have his performance evaluation done in a public meeting. He has to, if the board is not satisfied with the fire chief and they're trying to take corrective action, they have to first convene a public meeting and say, this is what we're going to do. They can go into executive session to discuss it, but the fire chief can then say, no, I want to discuss it in public. I'm a strong chief. Let's talk about this in public. And I see it's not the trend of what communities are doing now. Communities now are trying to create one coordinated team. The whole strong police chief and fire chief are really antiquated laws. And perhaps that's something for the select board to discuss at some point in time, whether you want to change it from a strong chief and eliminate that, revoke that provision. Other communities have done that. And so I think I agree with Mark that there's a way, and it would be good to talk to town council about it, but I think there's a way that we can do this in such a way that the fire chief is brought more into the fold and being appointed by the town administrator or manager, whatever.
Yeah, no, it seems like a good idea. And I'm completely convinced that the charter is allowed to change the appointing authority for that. That's not my issue with it. My issue is that the potential issue is that in addition to the strong chief statute stating that the chief is appointed by the select board, which again, I think the charter is empowered to change that, no problem. There's some of the other aspects of that statute that assign responsibility to the select board, and I'm not sure whether we can change that. And I'd like to think that we can, but that's what I would want to run by town council. It's not the question of the appointing authority. That the Home Rule Procedures Act rather specifically allows a charter to set the appointing authority for something.
I agree. I think it's a good question for town council to opine on.
Mark, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just want to echo, Jim brought up the crux of my proposal is the whole personnel issues when you're dealing with discipline, when you're dealing with everything. You want to, it's Jim will tell you, getting your review done in public stinks. Jim, I think you'll agree with me on that.
100%.
Yeah, so having the town manager, town administrator, he should have the ability to manage the employees, and he should be able to deal with those disciplinary issues behind closed doors and not air dirty laundry, because it's embarrassing for the town, it's embarrassing for the employees. So the main reason I was proposing that was very much so what Jim talked about tonight. So I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because that's a very important aspect of the proposal.
Yeah. I suspect, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I suspect, we can all appreciate that and agree with the desire to make this work. It's, I sometimes get myself into the weeds, but when I read that strong chief statute and saw it's more than just the appointing authority that leads me to suggest, and since it was my concern, I'd be happy if the committee is agreeable to reach out to council and get some clarification on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how do we do this and do it right?
How was our chief designation changed? It happened at a town meeting. I just don't remember how it came forward before we picked the new one. Well, before
The town meeting changed it to a strong chief.
yes.
And that's they just adopted the statute that established the strong chief, and then under the statute, the select board appoints the fire chief, unless of course our charter changes that.
Got it.
So that's how that happened, and that's when Eric got appointed.
Yep, so that happened.
I have a full-time page.
That happened at the November 2020 town meeting, if you're curious. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Yeah, like I said, I read some of these and look at some of the details and worry about things like this, so. But I don't disagree with the reasons for wanting to do this. And it's more a question of, can we accomplish it the way we want to?
Okay.
So I will follow up with council on that. Yeah, the one other discussion item I have is, let's see, what are the chances I actually have that there? Yeah. And this is more to, you know, go back to we shared with the committee, at the previous meeting, we shared Mark's three proposed amendments. Town administrator, changing town administrator to town manager, appointing the fire chief by the town assistant administrator / manager, and then he had one on finance and fiscal procedures. And I shared with the committee a version of his town administrator change with the red and green highlights. And I have one. There it is. Let me see if I can.
David, this is really well done. So this is what you were talking about that the bylaw committee did. This is really excellent.
I'm trying to access the make this a little bit more readable on the screen. And yeah, I had shared this with Mark to see if I got it right. And you just heard Mark's comment on that. So I'm just quickly scrolling through it. You can see an awful lot of red and green. But what I did at the top of this, and again, I'll send this out to the committee after the meeting. But I tried to summarize what's actually changed here. In particular, the important points that I saw in here is, well, aside from changing wording and formatting and phraseology and punctuation of it, what's the meat of this? And what I saw as the meat of this is basically four things. Requiring a joint select board finance committee meeting no later than October 30th to provide guidance and budgetary direction. And that gets to the more than one person's concern about, you know, having schedules and deadlines. Requiring the town administrator to submit a proposed budget to the finance committee by January 31st. And the finance committee publishing a proposed budget. So the finance committee sort of takes over the budget here and has recommendations that may be different from the town administrator. And of course, ultimately, if we succeed in changing town administrator to town manager, that goes into this as well. But I kept that out of this for clarity. So the finance committee has to publish a proposed budget at least 14 days prior to town meeting. And then at town meeting, this proposed amendment is the finance committee's proposed budget, and rather than the town administrator's proposed budget, that's voted on and presented to and voted on by town meeting. One detail in here is that, you know, the proposed language says that budget amendments proposed by the select board and town administrator get acted on before any other amendments are accepted, which is sort of the reverse of what the charter currently says. The finance committee has first shot at amending the budget. So this is what basically summarizes what Mark is proposing. And again, we don't need to nail this down yet, but I think this helps to clarify the meat of the proposed change.
And I can have, when I am keeping track of our proposals, I'll have it match this format. so you can easily read how the language would be changing in that proposal, and then a brief summary.
Yeah. So I see Mark's hand up.
Yeah, so the one proposal that we've received so far from Ms. Ethier is in the same section. So I guess my question, I guess Jim said he was going to keep track of the various things that come in. So how do we, because she had a lot of the things in her proposal that I'm also recommending. And she had some good points that might enhance this particular proposal that I'm making. So how do we incorporate that, David, so that the committee can keep track of those sections? Because I'm sure we're going to get, given what's been going on this year with the budget, I'm sure we're going to get one or two other suggestions on the fiscal procedures. So how do we keep track of the various proposals within the same section? Because what we want to do, you probably want to take the best of everybody's proposal and incorporate it into one final proposal. And that could be difficult, I think.
Yes, I think, yes, you're absolutely right. That's, I would say the same thing, that any proposed, the committee's ultimate proposed amendment to Article 6 here would include as much of Mark's proposal as we think we want to, as much of Ms. Ethier's proposal as we think we want to. Ms. Ethier's proposal was not expressed in terms of changes to the language. So we would take, and other suggestions are likely to be in the same vein, where they're not going to propose specific language. But we would have to take every proposal that touches on Article 6, ultimately we have to merge it into one committee proposal.
I think you just treat it as what it is, the difference between a suggestion on how the charter should act in the future and an actual amendment to the language.
Yep. Yeah, for example, going back to the fire chief example, it's clear what the proposal intends to do, and that is to make the town administrator, town manager in the future, if we succeed in making that transformation, but to make the town administrator / manager the appointing authority for the fire chief. Now, how we do that in terms of the language of the charter, we don't have to nail that down quite yet. Mark presented this in the form of proposed charter language. But in general, I don't expect that all of the suggestions will be in that form. But ultimately, all the suggestions that we get, once, whatever we choose to adopt, we will ultimately have to cast it into this form. So, yeah, I think that's probably a good way to keep track of it for now. Is this is Mark's proposal. We have another proposal that hits on the same section. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think I had identified another relatively minor detail that also affects this section. What you see in front of you is just a rendering of Mark's proposal at this point. But yes, we will have to combine them at some point, but it's probably sufficient for the time being to track each of the documents we get, note which sections they apply to, and one of our tasks will be to come up with proposed language that we want to present to the voters. Okay. Anything more on this right now?
Can I just offer to volunteer to do one other thing?
No.
As I thought about the idea, because both Mark and I brought up that we thought that the position title wasn't accurately reflecting what the responsibilities of the job is. And I know from being on the Municipal Solid Waste Committee that we had discussed that there are a group of towns in Massachusetts that Grafton uses to compare to. And I would be willing to go and review their charters, look at what authority they have granted to either the town administrator or the town manager, so that we could see a really quick comparison with those communities that Grafton normally compares to anyway, and just put it in a nice grid, so that we could basically see, is there a justification for changing the title from town administrator to town manager? Do these other towns that have town managers have the responsibilities that our town administrator has? And again, I'm retired, so I have time to do some things like this. And so I'd be happy to do that. And just put it together and bring it maybe at our next meeting for everybody to take a look at and see whether or not it provides some clarification, going one way or the other for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That thought some time ago had crossed my mind that we should see what other charters say. We've got, whether it's a town administrator or town manager, both, it's not only the job title, but it's the powers and duties that are associated with the title, because Mark's proposed amendment to change town administrator to town manager did not significantly change the powers and duties. It was mainly a change of the title.
Yeah.
And to some extent, it is my impression that in our charter, the powers and duties of the administrator align closely with those of a typical manager. But it would be excellent to have some comparison there, because one of the thoughts that crossed my mind at some point was, if we think a town manager is appropriate for Grafton, do we need to expand upon or modify the powers and duties that the charter says? And that's a point where comparing it with powers and duties assigned to typical town managers would reveal, are there any gaps? Is there any more power we ought to give to our town manager?
Yeah.
And that, like I said, that thought crossed my mind, that it would be worthwhile making that comparison. And if you're willing to do that, more power to you. I think the committee would appreciate that.
I am used to reading town charters, so I'm perfectly fine doing that and picking through those.
And might I
You
add,
lead an
if
exciting life, Jim.
Hey, you know what? I spent the weekend making maple syrup, so this will be a step up.
If along the way, while you're doing this research, you discover anything about strong fire chiefs and who they report to and how that is structured, could you make a note of
I
it?
could certainly make a note of that. I could reach out. Matter of fact, for those, it's probably like 20 towns, because they had both a smaller list than an expanded list. And so I would use the expanded list, and I could reach out to the town managers and say, do you have a strong chief or a weak chief? Just to find out.
I do remember that we had quite a bit of discussion that led up to the adoption of the strong chief. I don't remember what all that discussion was. I know some people who were more involved in that than I was. And I was really a spectator to that.
I only remember a lot of it because I filmed a lot of the videos that they talked about it.
But yeah, I think what we, as I recall, what we liked was the sort of not exactly independence, but the more autonomy that the strong chief had.
I didn't follow it as closely when it was happening. I kind of left it to people who were more experienced in fire chiefs. But I did take the opportunity this weekend to listen to the Municipals episode where he interviewed Chief Matthew, and he talked about what the differences were in towns that didn't have it as opposed to those that do. And part of it was that it really empowered the chief to do things without having to go back to the select board for every single, and
Right.
he was going down the list of some of the things that you would have to go to them for, and it's really gonna bog them up. So I think
Yeah. So I think we would be interested, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
in the fire chief basically retaining the autonomy and the authority that he has. We just think the town administrator / manager would be a more appropriate appointing authority.
And didn't we adjust the town administrator's authority when the town clerk became an appointed position? And that fell underneath?
Yeah, it did. Your
Evan?
memory is correct, Don. When they changed the town clerk to appointed, they put the
From-
appointment with the town administrator.
You're right, it didn't go to the select
Yep.
board, it went to the town
No.
administrator.
Correct.
So it makes a lot of sense. And like I said, I will reach out to town council with my questions about that. And I want to be sure that we can actually pull off what we want to.
I also anticipate at times when we are preparing to make formal proposals, we could have people that it would directly change their jobs with come in and give their opinion.
Yes, there's likely to be not as much of that with this committee as there was with the bylaw committee. With the bylaw committee, we basically, for every bylaw article, we identified the departments or in officers or boards or committees that were involved in the administration of that particular article. And, you know, we work closely with them to make sure that we understood what they do and what they might like to change, that they understood what we were proposing. But yeah, there was a lot more of that with the bylaws than we're likely to see with the charter. But absolutely, when it comes to a charter change that might affect a particular individual or board or department, you know, we definitely want to work with them to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding what should happen.
I just had a thought when Jim was saying that about, I guess, sort of putting together this like benchmarking tool. And I was just thinking about like sustainability of this committee, or even amongst other committees. I feel like we do a lot of benchmarking against other towns. Like, is there a way to, like, we do this again in 10 years, that we're gonna look at the same towns and the same sort of information, or even like across committees? I just wonder if there's like, I don't know, a way for us to sort of like not have to redo these things years after year, or be able to go right to a document and say, hey, this is what we looked at last year. And so maybe that's just
Yeah, it
something
would-
that we internally kind of.
It would be useful for the documents that this committee assembles and creates, you know, not necessarily so much interim work products, but, you know, background information and other relevant information. It would be good for this committee to see to it that all appropriate information is retained for use by the next committee that does this.
It could remain on our charter review committee section of the website, despite the board's collapse after 2 years or a
Yes.
year, whatever, just stay theirs.
Yes, the bylaw study committee had a section on the website and it managed to disappear. Fortunately, from the bylaw study committee perspective, I'm a pack rat when it comes to documentation. I have everything and more on my computer that the bylaw study committee used. And my intention with that, I haven't actually gotten around to it, but my intention is to go through the information I've gathered and collect together anything that might be relevant to the next bylaw study committee, which will be appointed next year. Yeah, next
Yep.
year. So whoever's on that committee, I want to be able to pass on to them everything that we did. And so the same applies to the charter committee.
One way to ensure that happens is that for our very last meeting, we could include all of the attachments in our final minutes. And then the town clerk would need to retain those
Yeah.
documents forever, because it has, all documents referred to in a set of minutes have to be kept in a final record.
In
So
fact, as it happens, the town clerk wants copies of all the documents that we discuss at each meeting. So
there we have it.
provided the documents are all discussed at a meeting, there will be a record, at least in the town clerk's office. All righty, what else do we have to do? Agenda. Okay, so I've got an agenda item for follow-up actions. We've discussed a few here. Do we want to commit to holding that public hearing we talked about at the April meeting?
I think it'd be better to do it before town meeting.
Yeah.
To have it be a little bit separate as we start this.
Right, so we will, I mean, we already have a meeting scheduled for that night. We just need to make sure that we advertise the public hearing sufficiently. We've talked a bit about that already. So in addition to an announcement of the public hearing accompanying whatever information we send out. We'll make sure we get a separate announcement sent out just for that public hearing. Get as wide a distribution as we can get for that. Jim's got some things he volunteered to do. Jack's got some stuff he volunteered to do. I volunteered to reach out to council regarding the fire chief. Anything else we see a need to do as a follow-up action right now? Just waiting for all the input to come in from all the suggestions we're going to get from the public. All righty, so we have the minutes of our February meeting up for approval.
Move to approve the minutes from our last meeting as presented.
Second.
Bob,
Nate's name is spelled incorrectly again.
Nate's, yeah.
I also, for continuity's sake, I'm referred to as John and Jack. Now, what I should be referred to as, I'm not sure. Put me in a pickle.
So Greg said if we send him these little corrections, he'll take care of it. So I will take the motion as to approve the minutes with any corrections that are submitted to the clerk.
Second.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Where's my list of attendees? Dawn,
Aye.
Angelina,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye, and I'll remember that I voted this time.
Jeff,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Jim,
I'll abstain since I wasn't in attendance.
okay. Angela,
Aye.
and Dave votes aye. Motion carried by a vote of 10 in favor, none against, and 1 abstention. The minutes are approved.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this meeting be adjourned. A motion to adjourn is not debatable. Dawn,
Aye.
Angelina,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Angela,
Aye.
Dave votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. And we will see you next month, and hopefully we'll start seeing more suggestions rolling in.
Hopefully we'll see some people next month.
All righty.
Take care, all.
Recording stopped.